Chapter 101. Magic Mirror. Magic Mirror, tell me what I want. Listening to the children's simple wishes while fireworks lit up the sky, Sebastian couldn't help smiling. Silly boys, haven't you heard that wishes don't come true if you shout them aloud? Standing before the mirror of Erised, with the kids bouncing around him, he felt a surge of curiosity. How would they react if they knew their deepest desires weren't the things they'd shouted? As a man of action, he decided to show them. Early the next morning, Sebastian brought a handful of first years to a tucked-away classroom at Hogwarts. Fred could hardly contain himself. Ever since breakfast, he'd been on edge. "Professor, is there really a mirror like that in the school? How come George and I have never seen it?" Since they'd started at Hogwarts, Fred and George had devoted every spare moment to exploring the castle. The Marauder's map had only made them more determined. After 2 years, they'd turned the place inside out, yet they'd never found this mirror. A thing that showed someone's deepest desire sounded irresistible. "You're not lying to us, are you? Fred and I have never found an empty classroom with a mirror in it," George added, eyes wide. Percy trailed behind them, exasperated by their noise. He suspected Professor Swann had invented the excursion to quiet the twins and give everyone an excuse to return to school. He glanced at Sebastian's tall figure and the small smile on his lips and felt a flicker of unease. Professor Swann shouldn't be that bored, should he? Still, a mirror that showed a person's true heart, Percy couldn't help stepping a little closer. Would it show perfect grades? Being head boy? A comfortable life? The idea of seeing what he truly wanted most made him quicken his steps. Sebastian led the children to a nondescript classroom. If he remembered correctly, Dumbledore hadn't moved the mirror of Erised yet. He pushed open the door. The room looked long unused. Dust lay thick on the floor. Old tables and chairs were stacked carelessly against the walls. But against the far wall stood a tall, imposing mirror, the mirror of Erised. Its ancient frame was carved with intricate designs, as if the wood had been keeping watch for centuries. Sebastian thought of something Dumbledore had once said: "To the happiest people in the world, the mirror would appear as an ordinary-looking glass." How many people were truly so content that they had no desire? The mirror of Erised revealed the deepest yearning in a person's heart. That, Sebastian thought, could be useful. If someone could name their desire, they might take the first step toward it. The twins, however, were already shouting with delight. "Too cool, George. This is so near the library. We never found it. Someone must have put a charm on this room. Fred, our exploration isn't over yet." Sebastian watched them with interest, remembering seeing the mirror piled among sundries in the room of requirement when he was a student. Because of the Philosopher's Stone, Dumbledore had taken it out and temporarily placed it here. Something caught his eye. Among the dust-coated furniture, one chair looked impossibly clean, as if someone had been using it lately. Dumbledore, perhaps, he'd been working with the mirror to hide the stone. Sebastian wondered what Dumbledore saw now. Grindelwald, as in his youth, his sister Ariana? Percy, peering at the mirror's frame, squinted at a string of runes. "Professor, what does this sentence mean?" He read aloud, unsure. The ancient words made no sense at first. Sebastian came up beside him. "It's simple," he said. "You have to read it backward to catch its real meaning." He motioned, and the inscription revealed itself as the familiar line, "I show not your face, but your heart's desire." "Just as I told you at breakfast," Sebastian went on, "those who stand before this mirror see their deepest dreams and desires. It shows them so vividly they seem within reach. Some people become obsessed, some lose themselves." "Why?" the children asked. "Because people see what they've lost, the wishes they never fulfilled, the things they cannot have. That can pull you in." Sebastian let the thought hang in the air. But the mirror isn't just about pretty images. It forces you to confront what you truly want. Wealth, power, family, whatever sits at the center of your heart, that's what the mirror will show. It can be a beautiful vision and a heavy truth at the same time. He glanced at them as if remembering his own school days. "When I was here, I used it to figure out what my goals really were. Remember, what appears in the glass is not reality. The point is to make you face your own heart." The explanation was all the encouragement the children needed. They surged forward, eager to see themselves reflected as they wished. Ron was the first to step up. The mirror showed him as head boy and Quidditch captain, fame wrapped up with prestige, and Ron stared, delighted and a little stunned. The twins took turns and saw themselves bent over blueprints and strange contraptions. What mattered most to them was invention and creation. Percy peered in and saw himself as Minister for Magic. His chest swelled at the sight. The brothers chattered, teasing one another about what they'd seen. When it was Harry's turn, he approached more slowly. What he saw left him speechless. His parents, alive and smiling, standing together as a complete family. Harry's hands flattened against his sides. He stared into the mirror as if it might change its mind. His deepest desire, he realized, wasn't to defeat Lord Voldemort, though that loomed large in his life, but simply to have his parents back, to belong to a whole family. He stood there in silence, and the room suddenly very quiet. Chapter 102, Passionate Researcher. Thanks to the twins, Sebastian had an unusually lively Christmas. Fred and George threw themselves into the alchemy lab, forgetting to eat and sleep. While he guided them, Sebastian also assessed their progress. He was surprised to find their theory was rock solid and their practical skills matched those of the interns at Swann Alchemy. They were only third years. This level was down to talent, of course, but even more to hard work. So Sebastian gave them a new research topic: how protective badges could improve students' efficiency in learning the shield charm. To see what clever ideas they would come up with, he provided generous funding and then left them to it. When he wasn't chatting with them, Sebastian's favorite pastime was teaching the youngsters to duel. Watching them cheer the first time they successfully cast a spell filled him with pride and a warm, simple happiness. Happy times are always short. The holiday flew by. As students trickled back, Hogwarts resumed its usual hustle and bustle. Laughter echoed through corridors, across the grounds, and in the Great Hall. The castle thrummed with energy. The students clustered together, swapping holiday stories. After a break apart, there was so much to catch up on. Hermione peppered Ron and Harry with questions about Swan Manor, eyes bright with curiosity and a little envy. When she learned that Harry and his friends had received personal instruction from the professor every day over the holiday, her jealousy was nearly palpable. "I should have signed the list to stay at school," she moaned. "Then I could have gone to the professor's house as Harry's friend and learned from him. My dueling's nowhere near Harry's, and I probably couldn't even beat Ron now. Come on, let's go to the dueling club right this instant. You two must teach me properly." With that, she dragged Harry and Ron toward the dueling club. Ron's face looked like he'd rather be finishing a game of wizard's chess in the last quiet hours of the holiday. Sebastian sat in his office with an odd expression. Since returning to the castle, indeed, since he'd grasped the magic of love and learned Grindelwald's fire shield charm before the holidays, something strange had begun stirring in his magical perception. He closed his eyes and focused, letting his senses flow through the castle, and noticed tiny, indescribable particles of light drifting from the students. They flickered and shifted with the kids' emotions. The more excited they were, the more of these specks appeared. He watched them closely. The motes didn't simply vanish. They hovered, drifted into the air, and slowly sank into the castle walls, as if attracted and absorbed by the building itself. What were they? Why hadn't he perceived them at Swan Manor? He couldn't answer immediately, but he was sure the castle absorbing them wasn't harming anyone. Intrigued, Sebastian took on the role of researcher again. He catalogued observations in his mind. Happy children emitted yellow motes. Kids hurriedly finishing homework gave off red and some black specks. Children who felt homesick produced a mixture of colors. The more agitated the expression, the deeper the hue. Could these colors be materialized emotions? He slapped his forehead at the simplicity of it. To test the idea, he only needed to experiment. As he concentrated, deliberately gathering his magical perception, he also turned his mind inward. The instant doubt and curiosity deepened, he began to see blue motes forming around himself. The blue intensified as his inner turmoil increased, responding to the ebb and flow of his feelings. Case closed. It was connected to emotions. Now for the puzzling part. Why hadn't he seen this at Swan Manor? The holiday at Swan Manor had been lively too, yet nothing like these motes had presented themselves. Something about Hogwarts must be different. Perhaps the castle's enchantments cause emotions to manifest in this way, he thought. He frowned. He had never heard of magic that directly materialized feelings, aside from the magic of love. Then he corrected himself. There were spells that relied on emotions. The Patronus charm, for example, demands the happiest memories and the strongest, most positive feelings. And darker magic often depends on the caster's emotional state too. To confirm his hypothesis that some spells were tied to these motes, he decided to provoke an emotional response and observe the result. He raised his wand and pointed it at a spider in the corner. Crucio. Chapter 103. Extraordinary wisdom is the greatest wealth of mankind. As the Crucio continued, Sebastian felt it clearly. Wave after wave of dense black matter poured from his body, as if trying to dye the entire room in darkness. Coupled with the mindset of the caster, Sebastian easily deduced what those black substances were, the deep malice inside the boy. So the kid who'd been cramming earlier had been exuding blackness because the stress of catching up on homework had filled him with a desire to destroy everything. Sebastian couldn't help but snort. Watching the castle absorb the black matter, he finally understood another reason why Hogwarts forbade students from learning the dark arts. Hatred and malice are easy to produce compared with most emotions, and in combat, they surface all the time. Dark arts fueled by such negative feelings are simple to learn, but if someone's heart constantly fills with negativity, they're much more likely to be corrupted. He could now see why Lily's magic of love was so powerful. It contained a mother's whole love for her child, a force that transcends everything. That, Sebastian realized, was what Dumbledore meant when he said that love is stronger than any magic. Shaking his head to clear drifting thoughts, Sebastian turned his attention back to the castle's unknown magic, the emotion magic that could materialize and absorb feelings. From his deductions, this must have been Rowena Ravenclaw's work, a system to soak up the emotions of everyone in the castle and convert them into magical power for Hogwarts to use. The endless emotions of the students provided a steady supply of energy, and with that stream of power, the castle, as a colossal alchemical construct, had operated for thousands of years. What a grand design. Sebastian felt awe for Ravenclaw's mind. Her plan wasn't only ingenious, it was far-sighted. He wanted to learn that magic and adapt it for Swann Alchemy's products. He also wanted to explore combat applications, using emotions to enhance fighting power, much like the Patronus charm. The potential seemed limitless, though the learning threshold was high. The question was whether Ravenclaw had deliberately left this magic behind, whether there were hidden Ravenclaw inheritances scattered through Hogwarts. The Room of Requirement was the obvious place to start. In his previous life, internet folklore had once whispered that Ravenclaw's inheritance was hidden there. Sebastian didn't fully agree. Rowena Ravenclaw prized wisdom and would not leave her legacy to chance, but the possibility was worth checking. He walked to the 8th floor and concentrated on all things Ravenclaw, passing in front of the blank wall until a room appeared. Each time, he searched carefully, but none of the rooms contained what he sought. He did, however, find an exquisitely crafted magic circle, clearly the mechanism that let the Room of Requirement become whatever a person needed. Still, his intuition said the Ravenclaw inheritance was not there. Next, he inspected the bronze eagle knocker at the entrance to the Ravenclaw common room, but that yielded nothing. Finally, he sought out the Grey Lady, Ravenclaw's ghost, and put his question in his heart. She studied him for a moment and then drifted away, her voice floating back. "You want to learn my mother's inheritance? Hogwarts is full of the magic she left behind. Pay attention, Professor Swann. Remember, extraordinary wisdom is humanity's greatest treasure." Sebastian watched her fade off, equal parts grateful and exasperated. She'd spoken in riddles and then vanished. As the school grew quiet into the late hours, he turned for the stairs and stopped dead. Standing on the moving staircase, he suddenly understood what the Grey Lady had meant. The castle itself was a repository of Ravenclaw's inheritance. Hogwarts had been built by the 4 founders, and Rowena Ravenclaw had woven her genius throughout it. Her inheritance wasn't a single spell hidden in a box. It was many magics embedded in the castle's functions. Traces of her work were everywhere, cleverly integrated so they'd be overlooked by ordinary students. The constantly reconfiguring staircases were her design, containing alchemical enchantments related to motion. Once he noticed, the pattern repeated itself in the classrooms, the house common rooms, the room of requirement, and even in the very bricks of the castle walls. If your knowledge and vision were deep enough, you could gradually uncover all of her work. Sebastian flopped down on a step, spreading out as he examined the stairs beneath him. Merlin's beard, he'd been sitting on a treasure trove his whole time at Hogwarts and had no idea. Only a handful of people, like Dumbledore and himself, would have the alchemical insight to perceive these things. Had the Grey Lady not nudged him, he might have sat on those stairs forever without noticing. He scrambled back to his office and, almost breathless with renewed curiosity, set to work on emotion magic. Thinking of his happiest memories, he raised his wand and cast Expecto Patronum. He shut his eyes and focused on the bright specks of light that represented joy. Those light specks streamed from his chest toward the office wall and were absorbed into the stone. He repeated the Patronus charm again and again, using the emotion to sustain the output, tracing the path of the lights as they entered the wall. Gradually, a magical rune formed in his mind. He sketched it onto parchment, retrieved his wand, and tested it. In short order, he understood the rune's function. It was the basic symbol for happiness. With it, he could take his investigations much deeper. Excitement surged through him. The 7 basic emotions, joy, anger, sorrow, fear, love, hate, and desire, were each likely to have their own foundational runes. He'd uncovered only one in half a day. There were still so many to study. He took out his two-way mirror and contacted Mia. "Wife, I won't be coming home to sleep tonight. You should rest early." "What's going on?" she replied. "Heh," he said, grinning despite the late hour. "I've discovered Ravenclaw's inheritance. I have to figure these out tonight." Chapter 104, Ms. Grey, do you need help? As the sun climbed, Hogwarts slowly woke. Morning light spilled across the castle stone, gilding every brick with a warm glow. Students spilled from the dormitories in small clusters, footsteps and excited chatter carrying them toward the great hall. After a night of research, Sebastian's eyes were bloodshot. He was exhausted, but elated. Quill in hand, he finished tracing the last complex rune on the parchment. When the final stroke was complete, he let out a long breath and surveyed the pile of papers on his desk with a satisfied smile. He was bone-tired, but the results had been worth it. Sebastian set down his quill, reached into his undetectable extension charm bag, and drew out a bottle of invigorating tonic. He uncorked it without hesitation and drank in large gulps. The cool liquid ran down his throat and warmed him from within, easing the worst of his fatigue. He let a small hum escape him as the morning sun warmed his face, then closed his eyes and slumped back in his chair, savoring a few moments of quiet. But he couldn't rest for long. A niggling question still needed answering. Since the night before, the rune representing love had felt odd to him. He wanted to know why. Feeling the last of his magic return, Sebastian conjured the feeling of love in his mind, extended his wand, and sketched the basic red rune for love in the air. The rune shimmered and slowly drifted toward the office wall. That was the strange part. A rune formed like that should not simply be absorbed by the castle. To check, Sebastian focused instead on happy memories and drew the yellow rune for happiness. The yellow rune stayed put, motionless in the air. The contrast confused him. He drank another swig of tonic, fending off drowsiness, and watched as the red rune continued to drift toward the wall. When the red rune touched the stone, a faint trace of a second rune sparkled into being on the surface. Under the glow of the love rune, it was almost invisible. If he hadn't been watching closely, he might have missed it entirely. The shape nagged at him with a sense of familiarity. Then he remembered. It resembled the communication rune used in the magical television, an advanced variant, perhaps. This rune appeared to be a kind of message conduit, containing words left by past generations. Its age couldn't be traced, only the castle's enduring magic kept it preserved. He tried every method he could think of to activate it. Force would only destroy the delicate rune and erase whatever was stored inside. Then a realization came. To unlock it, he would need a special key, a particular love rune, one with a unique form. Who could have left such a message, and what love rune matched it? A thought settled in him. This must be connected to Ravenclaw. He left his office and sought the house ghost, the Grey Lady, in a quiet corridor. "The Grey Lady," he said as he approached. Before he could finish, she cut him off. "You are too impatient, Professor Swann," she said, her voice cool. "If you cannot find my mother's legacy, perhaps your knowledge and wisdom do not measure up to those precious insights." Sebastian raised his hands slightly. "You've misunderstood," he replied, hurrying to keep her from floating away. "I have already found the legacy left by Rowena Ravenclaw, but the love rune connected to it is peculiar." Those words stopped her. The Grey Lady paused in midair, then turned to him, eyes fixed. Sebastian didn't elaborate. He drew the red love rune in the air again. The Grey Lady's expression changed instantly, fear and hope warring across her face, and she clutched at her chest as the rune drifted toward the stone. When the faint communication rune appeared on the wall, she stiffened and propelled herself toward it, reaching out with a hand that passed straight through the wall. "Mother," she whispered, grief and longing raw in her voice. Seeing her panic, Sebastian asked gently, "The Grey Lady, do you need help?" "Call me Helena, Professor Swann." She pulled herself together and smiled, a little embarrassed. "Excuse my outburst. I was simply too moved. I never imagined Mother would leave me a message." "Is that what you wanted to ask me about?" Sebastian prompted. Helena nodded. "My mother had an extraordinary sensitivity to the emotions of those around her. Her talent for emotion magic was remarkable. When she helped design Hogwarts, she summarized many emotion-related runes and wove them into the castle itself. But she left only the basic forms here, foundational patterns, if you will." Sebastian smiled. "Give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime," he said. "With those basic runes in place, it's much easier to invent spells or to develop more advanced alchemical runes." Helena's gaze lingered on the faint rune on the wall, her face a mixture of awe and sorrow. The message hidden there had been preserved for centuries, waiting for the right key, and now that key, or the clue to it, might finally be within reach. Hearing Sebastian's praise, the Grey Lady's features softened. "After I learned the basic runes," she said, "people could invent more advanced variants for particular needs. For example, the sound transmission rune we just saw needs a special love rune to activate. When I was alive, my mother and I used that method to send messages around Hogwarts." She hesitated, then found the courage to continue. "My mother was extraordinary. No, in my eyes she was the wisest witch in the world. She was so dazzling that I felt transparent standing beside her." Her voice grew hollow. "Of course, maybe I was simply ordinary." She shook off the melancholy and a spark of old pride returned. "I couldn't accept being ordinary. I wanted to be as clever as my mother." "No," she corrected herself with a bitter laugh. "I wanted to surpass her, to be smarter and more famous. So I stole her diadem, the one rumored to grant wisdom. Do you know," she said quietly, "that the diadem doesn't give wisdom. It only speeds up the wearer's thinking, makes learning more efficient. It doesn't put knowledge into your head. All knowledge still has to be learnt. After I took it, I fled to the forests of Albania and lived in seclusion, hoping to accomplish something before returning to Hogwarts. Then my mother fell very ill. She wanted to see me one last time and sent someone to find me." Sebastian listened closely. A name that belonged to the Bloody Baron flickered through his mind, but he said nothing and let her speak on. "Because I had stolen it, I couldn't face her. I didn't dare go back. I was stubborn then, certain I'd return to Hogwarts in triumph. I argued with the man who came for me, and he stabbed me with his sword in those Albanian woods. When I became a ghost and came back, my mother had already passed. She bowed her head and could not speak for a long time. Sebastian sat beside her and gently offered comfort. "Helena, even if you didn't see your mother in life, her words can still reach you through the rune. Teach me the love rune, and I will help you hear what she left." "No," the Grey Lady flinched. "No, I can imagine what it says. She must have cursed me for taking the diadem, for being rebellious, for refusing to go back when she sent someone. She must have cursed me for losing her. She wouldn't." Sebastian's voice was calm but firm, the steadiness of someone used to convincing. Historical records show Rowena Ravenclaw never proclaimed the diadem lost, even before the other founders. She never accused you of betrayal. You can trust me, Helena. She wouldn't have cursed you. Looking at his sincerity, the Grey Lady wavered. I'm a ghost without magic. I can only ask for your help, Professor Swann. Sebastian drew his wand and traced a soft red love rune in the air. The symbol appeared and drifted toward the castle wall. When it touched stone, a gentle female voice filled the room. My dearest Helena, I do not know if you will ever hear this, but people should leave some words behind. I regret that I cannot look upon you with my own eyes. That is the deepest sorrow in my heart. I regret it. I should not have sent the Bloody Baron. I thought he would search for you with all his heart. You are both proud and stubborn. Perhaps that caused the tragedy. Lying here, I think of how different things might have been if I had gone myself. If you had lived in those Albanian woods forever, as long as you were healthy, that would have been enough. As long as you are alive, that is enough. I know you have always looked up to me and you wanted to surpass me. That is why you took the diadem. You have been proud since you were small, and perhaps there is a knot in your heart about it, but I want you to know I would never blame you for such a thing. The diadem was always meant for you. I did not seek you out because I feared your pride would not let you accept help. I thought perhaps you would return when you were ready. Now I see I was wrong. Perhaps if I had come then, things would have been different. People say Ravenclaw values knowledge most of all, that I prized my diadem, but you are my greatest treasure. From the moment you were born, from your first steps, your first word of mother, the first time you lifted your wand, my heart was full of you. I do not care whether you become the most learned witch. To see you each day would make me happy. I would give up all my wisdom and knowledge to keep you safe. I would see you find love and live to have children and grandchildren. Even if you live alone, if you live freely and happily, that is enough. I do not know whether you will become a ghost and return to hear this, but I hope you can forgive yourself, let go of your guilt, and step forward bravely. Death is another great adventure. My sickness grows worse. Perhaps we will meet again in the next place, and I can hear you call me Mother once more. The voice faded, and the Grey Lady broke down in tears, sobbing with the sound of a wound finally healed. When she had calmed, she turned to Sebastian with a brilliant smile. Thank you, Professor Swann. Because of you, I know my mother never blamed me. All this time I thought the knot inside me, what made me linger as a ghost, was because the Bloody Baron had stabbed me. Now I know the real knot was my need for my mother's forgiveness. Now that it is gone, I no longer belong here as a ghost. She smiled serenely as her outline thinned. Don't be sad, Professor Swann. Be happy for me. I will go on to another adventure. She held out a trembling hand. Take these tears. You know, ghost tears are precious ingredients. Her fingers slipped through his palm like cold mist. Her figure grew faint. Sebastian lifted his arm in a final, gentle wave. Goodbye, Helena. Travel well. The Grey Lady's image vanished, leaving only the memory of her smile. Chapter 106. Is it too late to quit now? Sebastian leaned back in his chair, the wariness in his body finally loosening. He lifted the thumb-sized glass vial in his hand and studied the liquid inside. It was Ghost's Tears, a rare, mysterious magical ingredient prized in both alchemy and potion-making. Many legends surrounded Ghost's Tears in the magical world. Most famously, 3 drops were required to complete a batch of Felix Felicis. Felix Felicis, the so-called liquid luck, granted the drinker a streak of good fortune for a limited time. That was why it never appeared on the open market. Its brewing was complex, and most of its ingredients were almost impossible to find. Sighing, Sebastian thought of how he'd left things until too late. Much of the tears had evaporated while he dithered. Now less than half a bottle remained. It hurt to behold. He decided to divide what was left into 3 portions, one for his own alchemical experiments, one as a birthday gift for Severus, and the last to brew a small batch of Felix Felicis. But Felix Felicis demanded 6 months of careful brewing and regular adjustments. The thought of it gave him a headache. Ask Snape for help? No. Sebastian shook his head. Snape was too busy. Relying on him would mean the potion would never be finished in time. Then an idea struck him. Professor Horace Flitwick, retired or not, he he still kept in close contact. He could gather the ingredients and ask Flitwick to brew the Felix Felicis. He held the vial up to the sunlight streaming through the window. Beautiful. The tears shimmered in the light, scattering colors like a miniature aurora. Every slight turn of the bottle made the glow shift and dance like countless tiny stars moving in a private galaxy. Sebastian let himself be momentarily carried away by the light and forgot his fatigue. His thoughts drifted to the house ghosts. What would Professor Flitwick be like, distraught at the sudden disappearance of such a beloved ghost without a word? And the bloody Baron, how frantic he must be. The Baron's knot, his eternal plea to Helena, would remain forever tied. Sebastian hoped the Baron would at least go pester Peeves more. The students might thank him for the distraction. A sharp knock at the door jolted the office back into order. Sebastian slipped the vial back into his desk, frowned, and glanced toward the door. He sensed the person outside was saturated with negative emotion, a malicious presence pressed at the back of his mind. "Come in," he called. Quirrell pushed the door open and slid inside, forcing on a fawning smile. "Professor Swann, good morning." Quirrell's face was deathly pale. Sebastian's brow rose. Voldemort had been draining him dry. The fear and regret Quirrell radiated were thick enough to taste. Now was the moment to offer a hand and draw him gently to his side. If Quirrell were driven to drinking unicorn blood in desperation, it might already be too late. "It's nearly noon," Sebastian said lightly. "Have you been staying up late? You look terrible, Professor Quirrell." Quirrell flushed inwardly at the accusation he could not voice. He was indeed exhausted and thin to the point of frailty. He had come back from Albania seeking inspiration and found instead Lord Voldemort possessing a snake and the promise of eternal life. The temptation had been unbearable. But since then, everything had gone wrong. He'd come to Hogwarts hunting the Philosopher's Stone, brazen under Dumbledore's nose, yet despite 6 months of scheming, he'd found no method for immortality. Worse, Voldemort had been feeding on him, stealing his vitality a little at a time. At this rate, Quirrell knew he would not last another 2 months. Voldemort's insistence on unicorn blood made him shudder. The blood prolonged life, but it cursed the drinker to a half-life. Quirrell regretted everything. He wanted to quit. Every second he wanted to shout it, but the presence at the back of his skull would not be dislodged. He suspected Voldemort could sense any wavering, and so forced the unicorn blood on him, ensuring Quirrell would pursue the stone with desperate single-mindedness. He couldn't ask Dumbledore for help. If Dumbledore learned what he was, he feared Dumbledore would simply kill him. Quirrell had thought of Sebastian. The man was immensely wealthy and might have something to restore his strength. But to become an ally of Sebastian's, Quirrell would first need to pass the test of love, an idea he and Voldemort had mocked. Voldemort had scoffed at the notion that anyone understood love, that it was just an ethereal, unreliable force. Still, Quirrell had no choice. He studied the magic of love in secret, and after many sleepless nights, had made some progress. He had come now, hoping Sebastian might be persuaded. "I've been feeling rather weak lately," he said, voice trembling. He kept up the act of the nervous stammerer because he had to. He had to. The alternative was unthinkable. Sebastian's expression softened. He produced the small vial from his desk and held it up between them. "I have something good here. Would you like to try it?" Quirrell's eyes widened. He swallowed, shaking. "Professor." He reached instinctively, then faltered, muscles failing. Sebastian stepped closer and steadied him by the arm. The raw hunger in Quirrell's face was pitiful. He wanted to take the vial with both hands, to drink and be made whole again. Sebastian felt the first stirrings of a plan. A little help now, and a patient, steady hand to draw Quirrell into his orbit before Voldemort could tighten his grip further. He would not offer everything at once. He would be careful. But he would not stand by while a man was ground down. "Not all at once," Sebastian said quietly. He uncorked the vial and with practiced caution let a single, tiny drop fall onto Quirrell's tongue. Quirrell's relief was immediate and profound. Color returned faintly to his cheeks and his shoulders stopped shaking. He blinked at Sebastian with raw gratitude that almost drowned the terror behind his eyes. "Thank you, Professor Swann," he whispered. Sebastian smiled, but there was steel beneath it. He had given Quirrell just enough to steady him. Now came the hard part, winning his loyalty and discovering how to untie the shadow that clung to the back of the man's head. Professor Quirrell took the small glass vial with a skeptical look, unscrewed the cap, and sniffed it. Merlin, such a rich, warm scent of vitality. What was in the bottle? He glanced up at Sebastian Swann in confusion, and when Sebastian gestured for him to drink, Quirrell hesitated, then brought the vial to his lips. Sebastian wouldn't dare harm him. He was part of the school now. Dumbledore was watching. The warmth hit his stomach first. Quirrell tipped his head back and drained the vial in a gulp. Too little, too fast. He couldn't taste anything at first. Then his eyes widened as a surge of life force spread from his gut through his limbs. He felt lighter, more alive. Before he could fully enjoy it, the sensation faltered and the energy faded away. Was the vial too small? Had he been cheated? Unable to hide his anxiety, he blurted, "Professor Swann, what was that just now? Can I have more? I'll pay for it." Sebastian grinned when he saw the reaction. "That's water infused with the Philosopher's Stone. I paid a great many galleons for it, from Dumbledore himself." Quirrell's head snapped up. Water infused with the stone? Even that had such an effect. How powerful must the stone be? He had to get it. But first, his own life. He tried to keep his voice steady. "You won't sell me any?" Sebastian shook his head. "I don't sell at a loss. That little vial was a friendly gift. Of course, if we become allies." Quirrell blinked. Ally? He had not expected Sebastian to actually possess anything tied to the stone. Hope and greed warred in him. "If we're allies, will I be able to get this water for free?" "Free?" Sebastian gave him a look that said Quirrell's question was naive. "I never do business at a loss. Becoming my ally gives you the opportunity to purchase it. I bought it for a high price, and there isn't much of it to go around." Quirrell flushed. "Are you saying I'm so weak I'd need a lot of it?" He fumbled. "Well, if you don't want to answer, you could just ask Dumbledore." Desperation sparked a new line of lying. "To be honest, I was cursed while traveling last year. My life force has been draining ever since. That's why I considered stealing the Philosopher's Stone." "Oh." Sebastian's face lit up with understanding. "In that case, we have no conflict in our aims. We really are natural allies." "Yes, yes!" Quirrell was relieved the man had believed him. "Let's form an alliance now." "Not so fast." Sebastian waved him down, calm and confident. "To be my ally, you must have sufficient strength. Tell me, after 2 months, how far have you gotten on the 4th floor? Have you solved my problem?" Quirrell's smile froze. "No. Have you found a way past Cerberus?" He shook his head again. "No, but I know it's Hagrid's creature. Give me time and I'll work it out." Sebastian sighed and rubbed his forehead. "Your capabilities are limited. I'm not sure it's wise to cooperate. However," he added after a pause, "I won't leave you without a chance. Have you read the notes I gave you about love magic? How is your practice coming along?" Quirrell tried to sound confident. "The theory is sound, but I still can't cast it." "That's fine. I didn't expect you to do so yet." Sebastian produced a sheet of paper and set it in front of Quirrell. "Since your theory is good, take this test." Quirrell stared. "A test? For a professor? Love?" He nearly protested, but the image of that warm life force made him think twice. Sebastian's expression was level. "Don't take this as an insult, Professor Quirrell. I simply want to ensure my partner is not some warped dark wizard. I believe someone who truly understands love wouldn't be utterly evil." The questions are all essays. The more detailed, the better. If you write from personal experience, you can score very highly. Sebastian glanced at his magic watch. 1 hour, starting now. Quirrell opened his mouth, tried to object, then lowered his head and began to write. "What is love? Explain from the perspective of caring for friends. What is filial piety? Explain how to love your parents. What is maternal love? Describe a mother's love for her child. Elaborate on passion for life and how to maintain enthusiasm." As Quirrell poured himself into the answers, he did not notice tiny red motes of light trickling from his body and being drawn away into the castle itself. Very good, Sebastian thought, a satisfied smile on his face. There is still love in Quirrell's heart. This will make saving him later far easier. The hour flew by. Quirrell had genuinely bared himself on the paper, filling every question with personal feeling until hardly a line was left blank. When he set down his quill, Sebastian took the sheet and read it with interest. I like your answers, Professor Quirrell. Congratulations, we are now allies. He slid two shimmering bound contracts across the table. One binds you so that if you fail to steal the Philosopher's Stone, you must not involve me in any way. The other ensures that if the theft succeeds, we will jointly possess the stone. Read them and sign. Quirrell studied the contracts. Magical clauses bound them tightly. The penalties for breaking them would be severe. Sebastian truly intended to steal the stone. This was no trap but a pact. A weight lifted from Quirrell's chest. He signed with a shaking hand and felt a thrill of relief and excitement. He raised his head. Cerberus, Sebastian arched an eyebrow. Didn't you say you had a lead? I'm not familiar with Hagrid, so I don't have a clear method from him. But you don't need to worry. Apart from Cerberus and whatever Dumbledore has in place, I know the ways to get past all the other professors' protections. When the time is right, I'll tell you everything. Also, as far as I can tell, Dumbledore suspects a thief has been in the school. He hasn't actually placed the Philosopher's Stone on the 4th floor yet. We'll have to wait. I'll keep watch on the headmaster's movements. In the meantime, you can work on finding a way past Cerberus. Comfort washed over Quirrell. Sebastian's composure and apparent knowledge made allying with him seem a brilliant move. Hope flooded him, and he began to imagine the scene after they took the stone. He rubbed his hands together and tried to sound ingratiating. About the water. Sebastian took a large bottle from under the table and placed it in Quirrell's hand. 1,000 galleons for a large bottle. Small business, no credit. 1,000 galleons. Quirrell's heart lurched. His salary would never cover that. How could he possibly pay? Then an idea lit up his face. The dark wizards he'd seen at the Hog's Head Inn, ripe for taking. As a respectable Hogwarts professor, he could rob them clean and hand them to the ministry for reward money. Dark wizards, your Lord Quirrell is on his way. He chuckled inwardly at the thought of bounties and fast riches. Chapter 108. Dragon Breeding Expert Malfoy. With Sebastian's help, Quirrell's complexion grew healthier by the day. Students were surprised to see him smiling more often, and his stammer had all but disappeared in class. Sebastian even noticed faint yellow and red sparks that seemed to dance around Quirrell at odd moments. Quirrell had also taken up an odd new hobby, hunting down dark wizards. Sebastian had even received a letter from his old superior, Scrimgeour, grumbling that Quirrell kept taking all the interesting work and leaving the Auror trainees with nothing to do. On the first Friday in March, Sebastian was grading papers in his office when someone knocked. He opened the door to find the 4 of them standing there. Harry stood in front, looking nervous. Behind him, Malfoy and Ron glared in opposite directions so they wouldn't have to face each other. They looked as if merely making eye contact would be an insult. Hermione lingered at the back, hair more fluffed up than usual, looking distracted. "How did you 4 end up together?" Sebastian asked. He stepped aside, letting them take the sofa, and poured each of them a glass of cola. "All right, what do you need? Did you get into a fight?" They shook their heads in unison, eager not to be misunderstood, and hauled off to the entrance of the Great Hall to recite school rules. They exchanged looks and pushed Harry forward. "Professor Swann." Harry's voice was small and uncertain. "We wanted to ask you something. Could you not tell anyone else?" "Go on," Sebastian said. "What would happen," Harry asked quietly, "if someone was found secretly raising a dragon?" "Consequences, eh?" Sebastian's expression sharpened, and he immediately understood where this was headed. A few years in Azkaban, and if the dragon causes serious harm, life imprisonment is a real possibility. He put on a mock ominous smile. And accomplices are equally liable. The 4 of them went pale. Ron so nearly shook his cup out of his hand that Sebastian had to steady it. Is that true?" Hermione swallowed hard. "We were only asking." "We still have homework," Harry blurted, standing up as if that could save them. "We should go." As Hermione gave the signal to leave, a voice behind them made them all freeze. "Is Hagrid raising a dragon?" They all stopped cold. "Oh no, the professor knows. He used to be an Auror. He'll arrest us and send us to Azkaban." Ron turned white around the lips and stammered. "Professor Swann, are you going to arrest us and send us to Azkaban?" Harry sighed and shot Sebastian a helpless look. When Sebastian was unfamiliar, he had seemed calm and solid, Once you knew him, he was mostly mischief and a fondness for scaring students. Harry didn't believe Sebastian would actually send them to Azkaban and flicked a warning glance at Ron, but Ron was beyond reason and babbled the truth. Before Harry could intervene, Malfoy took 2 steps forward, suddenly syrupy. "Professor Swann, we're all on the same side. Let's talk this through properly. We came to you because we trust you. You wouldn't want to disappoint us, would you?" He glanced at Ron and then suggested with a smirk, "If someone absolutely must be arrested, I propose taking Weasley. His family has plenty of children. One more won't be missed." "Malfoy!" Harry cut in, furious. Ron shot a glare that would have torn Malfoy's head off if they weren't in front of a professor. Sit, Sebastian chuckled, waving a hand. "Calm down. I won't arrest you. I already promised not to tell anyone." Hermione let out a long breath and sat again. She straightened her skirt, collected her thoughts, and explained. "Hagrid found a dragon egg some time ago. He's been holed up in his hut every day, waiting for it to hatch. We've been trying to get him to send the egg away, but he's obsessed. He won't listen." "We were talking about it in the library," Harry added, and Malfoy overheard. Malfoy bristled at the implication. "I was helping," he said quickly. "You should remember how loud Weasley is. I could hear him from 3 tables away." "Let me remind you." Malfoy cupped his hands and did an exaggerated impression of Ron's loud, gruff voice. "Hagrid's gone mad, wants to raise a dragon in his hut. Does he think his job's not hard enough?" He threw Ron a contemptuous look, then turned proudly to the others. "If I hadn't interrupted, the whole school would have known. There were quite a few people studying that day." "Humph," Ron muttered. "And you expect thanks for that?" "Of course," Malfoy said loftily. "Let me be clear. If rumors start, it's not my fault. Blame Weasley." Hermione looked helpless. They'd all been careless. Malfoy had cornered them because they'd let the news slip. She rubbed at her hair in frustration and made it even messier. "I see," she said at last. Sebastian smiled and turned to Malfoy. "You saw the egg?" "I did. It's beautiful. Judging by the markings on the shell, it's a Norwegian ridgeback," Malfoy said, eyes gleaming. When the word dragon came up, Malfoy's mind clearly leapt to expertise. "After it hatches, you should feed it brandy mixed with chicken blood, a bucket every half hour. That'll make it grow fast," he pronounced, as if reciting the contents of a textbook. Sebastian raised an eyebrow to stop the boy from turning into a one-man dragon breeding lecture. "Right. I think I understand the situation. Now, back to why you came to me." Chapter 109. Law-abiding good wizard Malfoy answered quickly. "It's like this, Professor Swann. The baby dragon is about to hatch. We were trying to be proactive, arguing about how to take care of it," Ron added. "That big oaf Hagrid wanted to keep it in the Forbidden Forest so he could see it every day." "That's a problem." Sebastian raised an eyebrow. "The Forbidden Forest isn't small, but it's very hard to hide a dragon there. You know dragons can fly. Someone's bound to see it." "Exactly," Malfoy huffed. "The Ministry of Magic is really strict about dragons. If it were that simple, I'd have already asked my father to raise a dragon at Malfoy Manor," Malfoy went on. "I thought about writing to him to ask for a solution, but Ron and the others all objected." "Of course they did," Ron snapped. "Your father would tell the Ministry the moment he found out, and we'd all be in trouble." "My idea is more reliable," Malfoy continued. "My brother Charlie raises dragons in Romania. He could secretly fly in and take the dragon away." "Humph, what do you think Hogwarts is, a place you can just fly into?" Malfoy sneered. "Hogwarts is warded with protective magic year-round. Flying in would definitely alert Headmaster Dumbledore. Hagrid doesn't want anyone to know, especially not the headmaster. He said he didn't want to trouble him, typical Ron, completely inconsiderate of his friends." Ron didn't want to argue with Malfoy, so he turned a pleading look to Sebastian. "I'm afraid." Sebastian spread his hands. "It's absolutely impossible to fly in without alerting the headmaster." Sebastian agreed with Malfoy's assessment. It was very difficult to hide anything from Dumbledore within Hogwarts. Charlie could not sneak in on a broom. The reason they had succeeded in the original story, Sebastian thought, was that Dumbledore had actively helped from behind the scenes to train Harry. After the dragon was delivered, Harry's invisibility cloak had been left at the top of the tower and somehow ended up in Dumbledore's possession. Sebastian guessed Dumbledore must have used a disillusionment charm and observed everything while invisible. With that in mind, Sebastian stood and addressed the others. Let's go see Hagrid first. After all, he's the dragon's caretaker now, and whatever we decide, we should hear what he wants. Professor Swann, why are you here? Hagrid's face was full of panic when he saw Sebastian in the doorway. He nearly blurted something and then saw the four youngsters behind Sebastian. You already know? Hagrid's voice trembled. He had not expected the children to bring a professor from the school. It was clear now it could not be kept secret. He only hoped Sebastian wouldn't tell Dumbledore. Hagrid sagged, utterly deflated. Come in, he whispered. If the door stays open too long, this room will get too cold. Inside, Hagrid sat by the hearth, staring morosely at the dragon egg in the embers. Hermione couldn't bear to see him so downcast. She went over and put a hand on his arm. Don't be sad, Hagrid. Professor Swann is here to help. Help me? I don't need help, Hagrid muttered, voice near tears. This little dragon needs help. It needs my care, otherwise it'll die. I just want to raise it. Why's it got to be so difficult? Sebastian spoke up. Hagrid, there's a way you can raise it openly and honestly. Are you interested? What way? Hagrid sprang to his feet, eyes burning. He would do anything to keep this dragon. You mean a job? Dragon tamer? I have shares in a dragon farm, and I could arrange for you and this hatchling to go there. Sebastian genuinely hoped Hagrid would accept. That way Hagrid could trade the Forbidden Forest Night Patrol for the life he loved as a dragon tamer. Think about it. If you became a dragon tamer, you wouldn't just raise this Norwegian Ridgeback. You could work with other breeds, the docile Welsh Green, the magnificent Australian Opali, even the powerful Hungarian Horntail. You could raise whatever dragons you wanted. Hagrid's eyes brightened. He pictured living among great dragons and smiled, but then his expression dimmed. To become a dragon tamer, he'd have to resign from the post Dumbledore had given him. That felt wrong. He sighed. I'm sorry, Professor Swann. I can't accept. As long as Dumbledore's headmaster, I'll be the Forbidden Forest keeper he appointed. I need to look after the forest. I know I can't keep this dragon. I just want to see it hatch and raise it for a month, that's all. Sebastian was disappointed, but he couldn't let Hagrid keep the dragon for a whole month. Newborn dragons grow fast. In a month, Hagrid's hut wouldn't be able to hide it, and then everything would be exposed. He decided on a more moral tack. Hagrid, do you want Headmaster Dumbledore to lose his job? Sebastian asked quietly. What? Of course not. Hagrid snapped, horrified. How could I want that? Then why put him in a position where he might have to? Sebastian said slowly. If you raise the dragon for a month in secret, your hut won't be able to hide it. Your secret will be found out. People will point fingers. You could be sent to Azkaban. Dumbledore could be blamed for failing to control things. Is that what you want? Hagrid visibly shook. He didn't want to be locked up in Azkaban, and he certainly didn't want to bring disgrace on Dumbledore. 1 week, Hagrid said at last, his voice trembling. After it hatches, I can keep it for 1 week. Then you can send it to the dragon farm. When Sebastian accepted that, Hermione let out a relieved breath. That was the best they could hope for. But how do we keep it from being found by the headmaster? She asked anxiously. Why keep it from him at all? Hagrid said, aghast. Not only shouldn't we hide it, I'm going to tell the Ministry of Magic and invite all the papers. We'll make a fuss and send the dragon off properly. Are you mad? Harry and the others exchanged incredulous looks. Don't worry, Sebastian said confidently. To do this right, you just need a benevolent lie. A benevolent lie? The group leaned in, eager for Sebastian's plan. As Forbidden Forest Keeper, Hagrid patrols the forest regularly, right? The others nodded. While patrolling, imagine Hagrid discovers a dark wizard secretly hatching a dragon egg. He drives the wizard off and seizes the egg. Sound believable? They all nodded again. Driving off a dark wizard and taking the egg as evidence was perfectly plausible. The egg hatches in Hagrid's care. To make sure the hatchling survives, he keeps it until it's safe. And to comply with the law, he reports the find to the Ministry of Magic. He does the right thing, turns it in and follows their instructions. If we frame it that way, Hagrid becomes a model of civic duty, a law-abiding good wizard. Isn't that better than secretly sending the dragon away? The others nodded eagerly. It did sound right. Malfoy watched Sebastian with admiration. The professor's plan was clever. By changing the narrative, everyone benefits and still gets to gratefully thank Hagrid for doing the honorable thing. With that, the group fell into a flurry of practical arrangements: how to present the story, what evidence to produce, and how long Hagrid could keep the hatchling before the official handover. For now, at least, everyone was relieved, and the immediate crisis was solved. Hagrid would keep his conscience, the dragon would be saved, and the headmaster would never need to know about a secret hidden in a hut by the fire. Chapter 110, Don't Delay My News. In mid-March, Hagrid's wooden hut was unbearably warm from a roaring fire. 4 small figures stood around the stove, eyes fixed on the dragon egg with a mixture of excitement and nerves. Hagrid crouched nearby, face alight with a strange, anxious joy. At the faint click from inside the shell, he slipped on his dragonhide gloves and carried the egg to the table. Almost there, he murmured. Don't blink, the little un's about to hatch. Tiny cracks began to spider across the shell. The surface trembled as something inside pushed and wriggled. With a soft cracking sound, the shell split open and a wrinkled hatchling emerged. It blinked at the light, stretching and testing its new senses. When it saw Hagrid, it let out a high, curious squeal and spat a few sparks. "Merlin, it's beautiful," Hagrid breathed, scooping the creature up and cradling it like a mother. "It's taken to me already." Harry suppressed a smile. Beautiful was generous. The newborn was more folds than grace compared with an adult Norwegian ridgeback. Still, seeing Hagrid so happy and watching Ron and Malfoy crowd around, he kept his opinion to himself. "Let me hold it," Draco Malfoy said eagerly, pulling on another pair of dragon-hide gloves and taking the hatchling from Hagrid. Ron couldn't help himself. "Look at you, wearing full gear. Are you scared it's going to eat you? Move aside. Let me show you what a brave Gryffindor does," Ron shot back. Malfoy rolled his eyes. "Brave," he thought? "You're a hothead. Even a newborn ridgeback has venomous teeth." He set the dragon back on the table and stepped aside, waiting for Ron to make a spectacle of himself. "Ow!" Ron yelped. One quick nip had his hand smarting. He pulled it free and tried to compose himself. "Hagrid, is the chicken blood and brandy ready? It'll be hungry. Time for its first feed." "Heh," Malfoy drawled, not upsetting Ron further but making a pointed suggestion instead. "Make sure the brandy's good. Stronger brandy helps the little uns spit better flames." For a while, the two of them vied to be the true dragon master, offering Hagrid competing pieces of advice until his head spun. But the presence of the hatchling softened things between them. The 4 kept Hagrid's request to keep the dragon secret, and for a week they enjoyed the little creature almost to themselves. A week later, they carried the hatchling out of the castle, and the school emptied in an instant. Within minutes, Hagrid was surrounded by a shouting, laughing, gawking crowd. The tiny ridgeback was confused and alarmed, roaring and firing off little jets of flame. Students shrieked and stumbled back. Hagrid hugged the animal protectively, oblivious even when a stray spark singed his beard. When the throng reached the castle gates, they were met by an even bigger surprise. Reporters and photographers pressed under banners that flapped on either side of the entrance. Protect magical creatures. Start by fighting dark wizards. Caring for magical creatures is caring for wizards. Brave the dark. Hogwarts Forest Keeper is a national treasure. The media descended instantly. Minister for Magic Fudge, smiling broadly, pushed to the front. "Come now, Hagrid, hold the little one and stand on my right. Let's get a picture." He clapped his hands and called over a man in a Dragon Farm uniform. "You two, come shake hands. Look how this dragon was saved and safely handed over. This will show how we care for the future of wizards and magical creatures," another reporter chimed. "Make the hatchling look spirited, Hagrid. Give the public a proper sight." Harry and his 2 friends watched, bewildered, as Hagrid was shepherded into the spotlight. For a moment, it felt unreal. Hagrid, surrounded by flashbulbs, praised by the minister. "Did Professor Dumbledore arrange all this?" Ron muttered. "It's too grand. Even the minister came." "The morning and evening news will be full of this for the next 2 days," Ron predicted, craning to see the scene. He spotted Malfoy being ushered by his father into an exclusive interview and scowled. Look at Malfoy with that smug face like he deserves all the credit. Oh, he's got the press on his side. Ron grumbled, eyeing his own bandaged hand. He kicked a pebble and spat. Being rich is wonderful, isn't it? Slytherins stick to schemes, he went on. We Gryffindors do good things and nobody remembers. Ron, Hermione snapped, frowning. Be glad Malfoy helped. If he hadn't, his father would be using this to attack Dumbledore already. Fudge's voice boomed across the press cluster. Weren't there 4 young wizards caring for the hatchling? Come forward. Let everyone meet the future talents of the magical world. Young talents? Ron's eyes gleamed. He shot his bandaged hand into the air and pushed toward the center of the crowd. Move aside. Don't delay me getting on the news. Later, far from the chaos at Hogwarts, Sebastian sat in his office receiving a visitor and had no intention of joining the celebrations. Sebastian, find a time to close in on Quirrell, the man said. If this goes on, I'm worried Lord Voldemort will draw too much life force and become stronger yet. Sebastian poured his guest a glass of iced cola and let out a soft chuckle. All right, we'll set it for the first Saturday of next month. He met the visitor's gaze. I'll take care of Professor Quirrell myself. Chapter 111. Brave Slytherin time flew by. It was already Saturday, April 4th. Fred and George must be at Durmstrang by now, Ron sighed as he came out of the dueling club and watched the sun sink. It's a shame we weren't picked for the cheerleading squad. We could have gone with the team to watch the match. We should go to bed early tonight so we don't miss the live broadcast tomorrow morning, he added. Harry walked behind him, rubbing his forehead over and over as if he hadn't heard a word of it. Hermione noticed his expression and couldn't help but ask, Harry, are you all right? Want Madame Pomfrey to take a look? Sick? Ron spun around. What's wrong, mate? You've been rubbing your head since this morning. It's not my headache. It's my scar. Harry's voice dropped to a whisper. It's been hurting since this morning. That's a sign. Danger is all around us. Harry's tone made the words heavier than either of them wanted to believe. Danger? Ron and Hermione exchanged bewildered looks. You know who gave you that scar, Harry went on. I think it's warning me. He's come. Harry, Ron went pale, his voice shaking. Please don't say that name. Hermione looked around, then lowered her own voice. You mean, you know who has snuck into the school? This is bad timing. Ron's face was filled with alarm. Dumbledore and Professor Swann aren't here. Both of them went to Durmstrang with the team. Why would he pick a time like this? We should find Professor McGonagall and make sure you're protected, Hermione said. Don't rush. Harry's hand pressed to his temple. The pain was too sharp. He had to sit on a patch of grass. Professor Swann told me you know who is weak right now. He probably isn't after me directly yet. Then what could he be doing at Hogwarts? Ron asked. Harry hit his forehead with the heel of his hand as if to knock loose the right thought. He had a nagging feeling. Whoever had slipped into the school while the headmaster was away must be after something very important. Hermione's eyes lit up with a possibility. The thing on the 4th floor, she said. The Philosopher's Stone, all 3 of them said together. If that were the target, it made a grim kind of sense. Harry felt a little better. He had already asked Sebastian about it over the winter break and knew the stone was under extreme protection. It would be almost impossible for anyone to steal it. Don't worry too much, Hermione added, relaxing a little. Professor Swann told you that no one but the owner of the Cerberus can get past it without making a sound, didn't he? Then focus on your own safety first, Ron said. Cerberus. The word hit Harry like ice. His face went ashen. No. What if he's already figured out how to get past the Cerberus? Hermione's expression tightened. You mean Hagrid's dog? Ron watched them argue in bewilderment. What are you two talking about? What's Hagrid got to do with any of this? Are we going to find him? No. Back to the castle now. Harry sprang up and started running. There was no time to go to Hagrid. He had to check the 4th floor himself. Norbert had been sent away last month, and that made Harry feel more certain of his fears. He ran all the way to the 4th floor corridor on pure adrenaline. The door at the end of the corridor stood slightly ajar. Harry's hands went cold. His stomach dropped. Too late. Someone had already been inside. Ha! Harry, wait! Hermione panted as she and Ron caught up. Before she finished, a voice from around the corner cut in. Ha ha! Look what I found! You're finished, Weasley. The professors forbid coming here. I knew you were sneaking around like a thief. Shut up, Malfoy. Quiet, or do you want to get us killed? Ron hissed. Trying to scare me? Humph, no chance. Malfoy rounded the corner and froze. There in the doorway were Weasley, Potter, and Hermione. What were they doing here? Something had been going on. He was about to sneer when Harry signaled for silence and without a word pushed the door open. From inside came the low, heavy music of a wind-up box. Malfoy's eyes went huge when he saw the three-headed dog. The creature's great heads lay drooped but watchful. One more guarded growl would have sent a different message, but at that moment it slept in the syllable of a tune. "He's already gone in," Harry said, closing the door behind them and dropping his voice. He didn't dare say you-know-whose name. He didn't want to frighten Malfoy off and ruin whatever plan they might need. He needed help finding the teachers. "We have to get the professors. At the very least, find the heads of houses. None of the other staff have enough power to fight whoever's here." "Malfoy," Harry said, looking him in the eye, taking his hand and holding it as if pleading, "help us. The intruders infiltrated Hogwarts. Go find Professor Snape, now." Harry's grip was sincere and urgent. Malfoy's composure wavered. The dog had scared him. The whole place reeked of danger. His instincts screamed to refuse. Why walk into a trap? But this was the first time Potter had ever asked him outright for a favor. And lately, with them all having dealt with the dragon together, there was a strange, reluctant goodwill between them. Malfoy hesitated, then nodded. "Fine, I'll find Snape. We'll meet back here." They split up. Ron ran off to find Professor Sprout, Hermione to seek out Professor Flitwick, and Harry set off to find Professor McGonagall. He searched and couldn't find her anywhere. Resolving not to waste time, he raced back to the dormitory, gathered his alchemy kit, and hurried to the fourth-floor corridor. He arrived to find his three companions waiting, Ron, Hermione, and Malfoy. The look on Harry's face said it all. "No luck," he told them. "Nobody found a professor." "All right," Harry said. "I'll go in. You two keep looking for teachers outside." "Don't be daft. We're not leaving you alone," Ron snapped, his jaw set. He would not let his best friend go in by himself. Hermione stayed calm enough to think it through. "The only new professor this year is Professor Quirrell," she said. "If I'm right, he's the only one who could be capable of this." Quirrell wasn't famous. Apart from the ministry, no one knew the details of what he had once done. To the students, he was a timid, stuttering teacher with poor lectures. Hermione drew a breath. "If we go together, we might stand a chance." She turned to Malfoy. "Do you want to help us catch him?" Ron snorted. "Him? A cowardly Slytherin. He'll faint and slow us down." "Ron," Harry shot him a look, then aimed a barb at Malfoy with calculated casualness. "Malfoy, thanks for coming to find Snape. There might be danger ahead. You should go back to the dormitory and rest. It's safe there." That did it. Malfoy's face flamed. Is he looking down on me? Is he calling me a coward? He would not be dismissed. Today, this was about catching a villain. He wouldn't let 3 Gryffindors hog all the glory. Harry didn't wait. He wound the little music box, pushed the door at the end of the corridor open, and stepped inside. Malfoy drew his wand and, furious, followed them. Inside, the 3-headed dog lay before them, the soft, mechanical melody keeping its heads heavy. Harry felt the tension in the air, like a held breath. Whatever lay beyond this door would decide what came next. Chapter 112, Professors in the Monitoring Room. Unknown to the few students, a carefully hidden room sat off the 4th-floor corridor at Hogwarts. It was secretive by design. Only a handful of people knew it existed. Inside, the walls were lined with magic screens, each one glowing softly. One of them showed the 4 first years disappearing into the Cerberus chamber. Severus Snape could not sit still. He had already seen enough of these checkpoints to know what might be waiting inside. Although he'd been told the tests were meant to train Potter, his chest tightened the moment the children entered. Why were they so reckless? If they couldn't find a professor, they should have waited outside instead of barging in. Especially Potter, so like his father in his heedlessness. Granger had even worked out that the person behind the checkpoint was Quirrell, and still none of them seemed afraid. Did they really think they could handle an adult wizard because Quirrell usually acted timid? Naive. They were only first years. No matter how ineffectual an adult might appear, a few children could not manage him. And Malfoy, supposedly a Slytherin, was behaving like a Gryffindor daredevil. Where was his cunning? He'd been goaded and followed them in. If Snape had not been restraining himself, he would have rushed over to demonstrate the true bite of a Slytherin. He clenched and unclenched his fists, watching intently as Harry's quick thinking relieved him a little. Potter had grasped that music might put the Cerberus to sleep. When the music stopped, he had taken out a music box and wound it up. Good. That would get them past the first hurdle fast. The trapdoor below the Cerberus was not locked after Quirrell had gone in either, so Snape allowed himself a measure of relief. Then a new thought sharpened his worry. Why had they not scouted ahead? They jumped down carelessly. If it hadn't been Devil's Snare below, any one of them could have broken a leg. On the screen, the Devil's Snare was already entangling them. Snape's jaw tightened. He could not simply stand there any longer. He rose, letting his black robe swirl, moving toward the door. Severus, Sebastian stopped him. Have some faith in the children. I do believe they can get through the checkpoints smoothly, Snape snapped back. You believe? Snape turned, anger barely concealed in his calm voice. What is your evidence? If we leave it any longer, they'll be strangled by the Devil's Snare. Sebastian smiled as if to calm him. Miss Granger has already found a solution. They'll be out of it shortly. Besides, he added, nodding toward Snape, remember the wager. You bet they wouldn't try the checkpoints without a professor present. You lost. Accept it, sit down, and watch. Snape drew breath several times, forcing himself to sit and to watch. Even if they escape the Devil's Snare, he muttered, how do you expect them to get past McGonagall's chessboard? Do you think a gaggle of first years can defeat enchanted chess pieces? Don't worry, Sebastian said, indicating Dumbledore. The headmaster is watching. He won't let them meet real danger. Dumbledore lifted his eyes from the screen and smiled at Snape. Severus, calm yourself. They will be all right, I promise. In fact, this is better than I expected. Look, Potter's already after the key, and his flying is excellent. No wonder Professor McGonagall was so confident about Gryffindor's chances. There was a small complication behind that last remark. McGonagall was not at Hogwarts for the Quidditch match. She was in Durmstrang, one of the professors leading the team this year, accompanied by Professor Sprout. Very few in the school knew this. Most students assumed Dumbledore and Sebastian were managing the team. That had been intentional, a ruse to mislead Quirrell, to give him the confidence to attempt the theft. Sebastian felt a little guilty. He had only told McGonagall he planned to use the match to try to catch the thief. She did not know that several professors were quietly watching the magical screens, nor that the people confronting the thief on the front line were a handful of first years. If McGonagall knew how things actually were, there was no telling how furious she would be. Sebastian winced at the thought. It would be best if the tallest figure there, Dumbledore, bore the brunt of her displeasure. He had just reached for his glass of iced cola when Professor Flitwick spoke up. Potter's flying is remarkable. He's already got that key. I'm very curious to see how they manage the next challenge. But his eyes tracked from the four students to Quirrell on another screen, a man scratching his head and ears. I still can't accept that the thief hiding in Hogwarts is Quirrell. Flitwick's face was heavy with disbelief. Quirrell had been an excellent Ravenclaw student, bright and enthusiastic. He'd become a professor at Hogwarts soon after graduating, and used to bring Flitwick flower specimens to admire. How had a year of travel twisted him into this? The thought caused Flitwick to sigh. Dumbledore, he said quietly, turning to the headmaster, if there's anything you can do, please try to help Quirrell. I cannot bear to see such a promising young man lose his way completely. Chapter 113. Don't think too much, just be reckless. Hearing Professor Flitwick's plea, Dumbledore fell silent for a moment. If he could, he would have agreed without hesitation, but given Professor Quirrell's current condition, there was no guarantee. He was powerful, but not omnipotent, and he had no sure solution for Quirrell. Then Dumbledore remembered that Sebastian had mentioned having some methods when they were planning. He turned to Sebastian with a questioning look. Professor Flitwick, Sebastian said before anyone else could speak, seeing Flitwick's worried face and Dumbledore's glance. Judging from Quirrell's condition, I think he's not fully consenting. His life may be in danger, so saving him will be complicated. Complicated? Flitwick's eyes flashed with anger. Who would coerce one of Ravenclaw's most promising young wizards like that? Sebastian, do you have anything you can try? Don't worry, Professor Flitwick. Sebastian smiled reassuringly at the old man. I'm 70% confident I can save Professor Quirrell. And the other 30? Flitwick pressed. Whatever you need from me, tell me. The rest depends on Professor Quirrell himself. If he cooperates, the chance of saving him goes up to 100%. By that point, McGonagall's chessboard display had shown the children in a stalemate. Sebastian stood. It's my turn next. I hope by the time I get there, they've made it past this stage. Professor Flitwick, Headmaster Dumbledore Severus, please wait here. I'll be right back. Sebastian left the monitoring room. In the chamber with the enchanted chessboard, the 4 children who had to pass the challenge were embroiled in a heated argument. Harry, if the knight I represent gets taken by their queen, you can checkmate their king, Ron said, straddling a stone knight, eyes on the board. He had worked out that Ron's sacrifice would be the cheapest way to win. No, Hermione protested, grasping the meaning of Ron's plan. You can't do that, Ron. There has to be a better way. Don't do it, Ron, Harry urged, torn. He wanted to move forward, to stop Quirrell from getting the stone, but he couldn't ignore the brutal fate that seemed to befall captured pieces. He did not want Ron smashed into pulp by the opposing queen. Trust me, this is the best way to win. Sometimes we have to make sacrifices. Malfoy, who had been standing to the side the whole time, sneered. Weasley, you've lost your mind. There's a better way to win right now. Shut up, Malfoy, Ron snapped. You coward, standing off the board, you're not allowed to criticize. Malfoy raised his chin. I wouldn't put my safety in your hands. You were the one shrieking at the devil's snare. If it weren't for Granger, you'd already be dead. There was a simpler option the whole time, and you didn't see it, he added smugly. We could break the stalemate by force. Hermione turned to him, exasperated but curious. Unlike the 3 of them, Malfoy had been watching from outside the board. Perhaps he had noticed something they hadn't. Don't listen to him, Harry, Ron protested weakly. He's only bragging. Harry ignored Ron's protests and stared at Malfoy. The look of triumph on the Slytherin's face grew. It's simple, Malfoy announced. There are always 2 ways to beat a stage, one that uses puzzle solving and one that just uses power. Cerberus is strong, but not invincible if you have stronger magic. If a trapdoor won't open, you smash it. If a key won't be found, you break the door. Now look at this chessboard. Thanks to Weasley's cleverness, there are very few pieces left. We just fight them, smash the remaining pieces, break through and go. Hermione frowned, but to her own surprise, found the idea tempting. That would be much simpler, she said. I think we were overthinking it, trying to follow the rules when a direct approach would be faster. Ron hesitated. He was frightened at the thought of being crushed, but his pride made him slow to admit Malfoy might be right. He turned to Harry, hoping he'd give the final word. Harry thought for a moment and could see the logic. No sacrifice would be required if they could simply destroy the remaining pieces. He was about to agree when Hermione suddenly interrupted. Wait, she said. I found a problem. She pointed to the board. Before we entered, Professor Quirrell passed this room once already. When we first came in, the board had been full of pieces. That means the board resets itself. We can't just leave a piece of aggro unattended. If we start smashing pieces without controlling where the attention is, the board will reset and we'll be back where we started. Harry's eyes lit up with understanding. The implication was clear. They couldn't fight as individuals. If the board repopulated its pieces when the attention shifted, they had to stabilize the aggression first, focus on the thing that controlled the reset. He looked from face to face. We can't fight separately, he said. We need to focus fire and take down the opposing queen first. If we knock her out, the other pieces should stop reinforcing. They all readied their wands. Ron, Hermione, and Harry adopted battle stances, even Ron's jaw set. Malfoy watched, smug but silent. His idea had forced them to reconsider, but the execution had to be coordinated. Get ready, target the queen, Harry ordered. 3, 2, 1. Expelliarmus, they cast together. The single, coordinated spell hit the animated queen with a crack of light. For a heartbeat, the board was suspended. The queen staggered, one stone hand flying off balance. Then she shattered free of her square and toppled, the force of their combined disarming spell sending her tumbling across the chessboard. Several lesser pieces hesitated, their movements stuttering, and the enchanted board stopped its periodic reshuffling. With the queen disabled, the children had the opening they needed. They surged forward, every move from now on a coordinated strike rather than a sacrifice, and the first real chance to clear the board without losing one of their own. Chapter 114. Want to punch me in the chest? 4 spells of different colors flashed out and struck at the opposing queen almost at once. Only Harry's Expelliarmus did anything useful. It knocked the queen's scepter from her hand. The other 3 spells passed right through. Stupefy is useless, Malfoy snapped. Don't use Stupefy anymore. Petrificus Totalis is useless too, Hermione realized aloud. They're stone. They can't be bound like people. Expelliarmus works, Harry said, surprised and pleased. Disarm all their weapons first. Ron was just about to switch spells when the queen he'd been attacking shifted and moved toward the knight he represented. She no longer had her scepter, but she raised both stone fists and smashed them down straight at Ron. Merlin's socks! Ron yelled, leaping off his stone horse and barely dodging the blow. The queen's strike crushed the horse to pieces with a thunderous crack. Splinters and rubble hit Ron. The queen's own arms collapsed with the impact, however, and lay shattered. At least for now, she was less dangerous. Ron, come join us, Harry called, glancing around. He had noticed something else. The broken pieces outside the board were beginning to mend themselves. His shout turned to Malfoy. Malfoy, get onto the board, or those fallen pieces will revive. Malfoy scrambled onto the chessboard, and luckily, the healing stopped as soon as he stepped on. There was no time to relax. The remaining enemy pieces were moving. Don't panic, Harry shouted while firing Expelliarmus at the advancing shapes, trying to keep them off balance. Our pieces aren't attacking. There are only 5 of them. No, Malfoy said, throat tight. We need something stronger. He'd already tried most of what he had. Even though he'd been casting near the top of his year, he was still a first year. His raw power was limited. Does anyone know the blasting curse? The exploding charm? He added, thinking of something powerful enough to smash them. No, Ron barked. This was your idea, using brute force, and we haven't broken a single piece. If we'd followed my plan, we'd have won by now. We should restart the game. Stop arguing, Hermione snapped. She'd been working things out quickly in her head. If McGonagall had transfigured the pieces into stone, most ordinary spells would be useless. Petrificus Totalis couldn't bind stone, Stupefy couldn't stun something with no consciousness, and ropes from binding charms would snap. Transfiguration was what made them so resistant. And the exploding charm Malfoy wanted was advanced. None of them knew it. Hermione forced herself to breathe and think. Flitwick had taught her how spells could interact. There had to be an ordinary charm that would work on these. Then she remembered something from a book, a repelling charm. Harry, Ron, Malfoy, do you know the repelling charm? She asked. All 3 shook their heads. Hermione's voice got quick. I've only read the gesture and the incantation. I've never tried it. I can do it, but I need you to buy me some time. Hermione, go for it, Harry said. I'll keep them busy. You can do it, Ron said, voice louder and oddly encouraging. You're the smartest witch I know. Malfoy didn't say anything, but he looked at Hermione with intensity and determined silently to learn more when this was over. Hermione closed her eyes and ran the movement through her mind. The wand movement was simple, point, steady. The incantation was everything. She had to believe it would work. She mouthed the words and checked the timing once more, then opened her eyes and aimed at a knight that had been bearing down on Harry. Repello Maxima! A faint red streak shot from her wand and struck the knight. The stone figure was hit as if by an invisible, enormous force. It leapt into the air, sailed backward several meters, and smashed outside the board. The others watched, waiting for it to reassemble, but instead the knight shattered into a rubble heap. It did not mend. It worked, Ron whooped. Hermione, show us how. Under Hermione's quick instruction, Harry and Malfoy picked up the movement and the words. Before the remaining pieces could encircle them, the 3 of them knocked 2 more figures off the board. Hermione succeeded with another cast, and sent the opposing king tumbling off and breaking apart. At that point, only the queen with her broken arms stayed on the board. Everyone breathed a little easier and turned to look at Ron. "Weasley, are you going to do it or not?" Malfoy taunted. "If not, stand aside and stop holding us back." "You shut up," Ron shot back, face flushed. "It tried to smash my chest off. I'm finishing this." He mouthed the incantation under his breath, took steady aim at the slow approaching queen, and, sure this time would work, drew a breath and shouted, "Repello Maxima!" When Professor Swann arrived at the checkpoint, Professor McGonagall had left. The youngsters were already gone. He scanned the area and quickly found signs of a forced passage. They'd chosen to barge through, so Malfoy's presence had altered their approach. Interesting. He'd better move faster. Professor Swann raised an eyebrow and trained his wand on the restored chessboard. A white frost spread over the pieces, and, in the blink of an eye, it crystallized into thick ice, turning them into exquisite frozen sculptures. He stepped across the board. Each footfall rang on the ice. Those chess pieces that had given Harry and his friends such trouble posed no obstacle to him. At the next chamber, he paused at the troll sprawled on the floor, the bloody lump on its head making him sigh softly. "Oh, these foolish children," he murmured. He shook his head, part amused, part exasperated. Didn't they realize the enemy had the power to deal with the troll far more easily? They still went on, reckless. He quickened his pace toward the door leading to the next level. As he opened it, Hermione's surprised voice reached him. "Professor." Harry drank the potion to get through the black flames and went into the next room. "Please hurry and save him." "There was only enough potion for him. The three of us couldn't follow," Ron added. "We were worried there wouldn't be enough for the way back. Thank goodness you are here. Otherwise, we wouldn't have known how to get past those purple flames." Hermione's eyes shone as she spotted him, relief flooding her features as if she'd found her pillar of strength. "How long has he been in there?" Professor Swann's voice was calm and comforting. "Less than half a minute." "Good. Less than half a minute. Perfect timing. In such a short time, Harry wouldn't have come to any harm." He was most likely still engaged with Quirrell. Seeing how Harry performed now compared to the original timeline made Professor Swann quietly eager. "All right," he said. "You three go back up first. I'll go and get Potter." He waved his wand, and the purple flames behind him guttered out, leaving an ordinary door. Malfoy, seeing a professor had arrived, suddenly grew bold. "Professor, can we come with you to rescue Potter?" he asked, eager. Professor Swann looked at him with mild surprise. The boy had no idea what truly waited inside. If he brought Malfoy in now, the consequences when Lord Voldemort returned might be unpleasant. He smiled at Hermione and Ron, who looked equally anxious, and said, "There could be danger inside. If you're with me, I can't act with my full strength. Go up quickly. Professor Flitwick will be waiting for you at the entrance." Watching the three climb away, Professor Swann cast a silencing charm and a disillusionment charm on himself. He took out the potion Severus Snape had given him, drank it, and stepped toward the black flames. Meanwhile, Quirrell fumed in the darkness of the next chamber. "Potter, don't hide! Come out!" he shouted into the black. "You should know you stand no chance against me. Don't waste your time." He had been stuck on this level too long. After receiving Swann's message, he had rushed down the fourth-floor corridor, convinced the information ensured success. As the protections stacked, his confidence had grown. This was certain, he had thought, until the mirror of Erest in the final chamber befuddled him. He could see the Philosopher's Stone reflected, but had no idea how to extract it. Even the presence on the back of his head, Lord Voldemort, offered no solution. Frustration had gnawed at him, and then Harry's arrival seemed to offer the breakthrough the Dark Lord demanded. "Catch that boy," Voldemort had insisted. "Only he can obtain the stone." So Quirrell had been searching when, before he could move, Harry smashed something at his feet, and the room went utterly black. "Lumos!" Quirrell cried. Then Incendio, but the spells were swallowed by the darkness. Damn it! He tried everything he could, but nothing pierced the black. He couldn't see, which made him frantic. "Potter, don't be clever. You can't stall forever. I don't believe you have an endless supply of tricks. The moment the darkness clears, I'll make you pay." A faint noise by his ear made him flinch. He thrust his wand toward the sound. grasping for whatever had made it. "You miserable Potter, using a movable alchemical dummy to trick me." "All right then," he muttered to himself. "Let's see how long you can stay hidden." With that, he transformed the robes on his body into long, snaking cords. Under his control, they slithered like serpents across the room, probing for a body. Harry crouched behind a pillar, scattering Peruvian instant darkness powder every 30 seconds. Knowing he was the only one who could enter that room, he'd brought countermeasures. Stall, stall, stall. His pouch of alchemical oddments had been useless against the chessboard, but here they bought him precious time. He wasn't trying to defeat Quirrell, only to prevent him from getting the Philosopher's Stone until help arrived. He was confident he could hold out until a professor did. Then, as he let loose a movable dummy, something grabbed his legs. Ropes. He yanked, but a shout from Quirrell followed. "Got you, Potter." Before he could react, ropes coiled tight around him and dragged him toward Quirrell's voice. Panic rose. He'd been careless. Then, suddenly, he felt himself stop. His body was lifted and carried the other way, away from Quirrell. "That's enough. Your performance was quite impressive, Potter," a voice said. Although he could not see, Harry recognized it at once. It was Professor Swann's voice. It sounded again, calm and reproving. "Being too eager can cost you your life." Quirrell spluttered, "Professor," and then fell silent. Chapter 116, The Man Hiding in the Turban. "Sebastian, how could it be you?" Quirrell's angry shout came from the dark. A wasted effort. Quirrell had thought he had Harry trapped, and then Sebastian appeared out of nowhere and rescued him. The sudden turn filled Quirrell with a prickling unease. This was nothing like he'd planned. "Give me Harry. He is the key to the Philosopher's Stone. I'm about to succeed." "I'm afraid not," Sebastian answered calmly, as if he had all the time in the world. "Harry won't be handed over to you." At Sebastian's words, Quirrell's heart plummeted. What's going on? Does this man no longer want the stone? Why won't he do as I asked? Is he planning to take it himself? Or was this all a trap? "Idiot!" a hoarse voice snarled in the back of Quirrell's head. "Don't hesitate. Kill him and take the boy." Voldemort's impatience rose up in Quirrell. Kill him? It was easier said than done. He could barely see. Harry was standing right next to Sebastian. If he struck blindly, he might kill Harry by accident. Still, Quirrell began flinging spells toward where Sebastian's voice had come from, testing, grasping for any advantage. "Stupefy! Petrificus totalis! Crucio!" Spells cracked and hissed through the darkness, and Harry hunched in terror. He had no desire to be merely a spectator. He worked quickly to free the ropes binding him. Slowly, the dark began to dissipate. The magical lamp glowed and revealed the room in clear light. Sebastian stood before them, perfectly relaxed and wandless, as if he had just stepped off a holiday beach. Between him and Quirrell shimmered a transparent protective barrier. Quirrell's spells struck it and only made ripples. "Is that a shield charm?" Harry thought. It didn't look like the simple shield charm he'd seen used with the protective badge. The pattern was much more complex, the defense far stronger. There wasn't time to puzzle it out. He tore at the ropes and then hurried to Sebastian's side, ready for instructions. Sebastian smiled at him, then looked back at Quirrell and said evenly, "Professor Quirrell, have you had your fun? If you don't stop, I'll retaliate." Quirrell snapped, glaring with red-rimmed eyes. Quirrell's spells had had no effect. The gap in their power felt enormous. Sebastian hadn't even lifted a wand and yet had absorbed everything. If Sebastian really attacked, could Quirrell even survive? "What are you waiting for? Use the killing curse," the voice in the turban demanded again. "End him and take the boy." Quirrell hesitated. The other man's power was plainly superior. The killing curse might not kill him and would certainly draw retaliation. He ignored Voldemort's urging and lashed out instead with accusation. "You went to Durmstrang, didn't you? Why are you here? Aren't we allies? Why aren't you helping me?" "You lied," Sebastian replied quietly. "You came to take Harry, so Dumbledore." "Do not worry," Sebastian cut in smoothly, attempting to soothe Quirrell's panic. "Dumbledore is not here, and I have been helping you, truly. Can't you see? You would have drunk unicorn blood long ago and lived half a life, dead by degrees, if I hadn't stopped you," Sebastian went on. "If I hadn't stopped you, if you'd touched Harry, you would have died by his hand. Ask yourself, does the thing in your turban truly value your life?" Enough. Do not plant discord between master and servant. A sharp voice snapped from Quirrell's turban. This time, the voice was loud and clear to everyone. Who? A person hidden in Quirrell's turban? Harry's head spun. The lightning-shaped scar on his forehead flared and burned. Voldemort. It all snapped into place. He felt the old, terrible knowledge in a flare of pain and hatred. He stared at Quirrell's head, and as the turban began to peel back layer by layer, his revulsion turned to stunned horror. Under the cloth was not simply a mouth or a mask, but a human face, grotesquely revealed where Quirrell's skull should have been. Pale as a corpse, the skin pulled tight over bone with a dried, gaunt look. The nose was flattened, almost serpentine, only two narrow slits for nostrils that breathed with a low hiss. The eyes were sunken, glittering like shards of ice, malignant and utterly inhuman. For a moment, Harry's knees went weak and he stumbled back. This was Lord Voldemort? The man the wizarding world feared, reduced to something ghastly and skeletal? A hot, terrible fury boiled up in Harry. This was the thing that had killed his parents. Lord Voldemort, he cried, stepping forward despite the trembling in his legs. You're the one who killed my parents. I'll stop you from getting the Philosopher's Stone, from being resurrected. How brave, Voldemort purred, mockery in every syllable. The great Harry Potter, the child who was supposed to have defeated me. Such courage, I admire it. Your parents were brave too. In my mercy, I spared them a long, painful death and gave them the kill, released them swiftly. Do you want to hear your mother's last words? Come closer, help me, and I'll tell you every one. Never, Harry snapped, fury burning through him. He raised his wand. He didn't want anything but to strike that face. Depulso. A pale flash of a shield charm sprang up in front of Quirrell, and Harry's spell slid and fizzled harmlessly away. He ground his teeth and prepared to cast again, but Sebastian stepped quietly up behind him, placing a steadying hand on his shoulder. Foolish, the voice in the turban hissed, furious. Such carelessness with your life. You will die by my hand. I will prove it to the world. Sebastian interrupted him with a single, smooth sentence. My Dark Lord, why argue with a child? Voldemort turned those cold eyes toward Sebastian. Didn't you want to speak with me? I am right here, Sebastian said. Let's talk. Chapter 117. Become my right-hand arm. When Sebastian interrupted him, Lord Voldemort did not flare up. He turned his red eyes toward Sebastian and spoke in a low, silky whisper. Sebastian Swann, I know you, an excellent pure-blood wizard. I admire you. My creed is pure-blood supremacy. I need talented people like you to help me realize it. You see, there is no real conflict between us. Hand that boy to me, and I will get the Philosopher's Stone. With enough elixir of life, I can fashion myself a body. I will no longer be a shade sharing a host. I will live again in my own flesh. Then I will rule the wizarding world. Join me, and I will make you my right hand. I will give you supreme power. Voldemort's voice was deep and intoxicating, each sentence a carefully laid temptation that seemed to worm its way into the listener's heart. His eyes glittered with a dangerous promise as he continued. Stand with me and you will have endless glory. Those who once looked down on you will grovel. Your potential will be realized. Morals and laws are excuses for the weak. The strong survive, the weak perish, an eternal truth. Will you be strong, or will you let sentiment and righteousness bind you? Be faithful to me, and I will open the secret of immortality to you. You will stand with me over the centuries, looking down on all life. Come, follow me, and together we will remake this world. Our names will be carved into history. Follow me, and we will break the chains that keep you small. You will be one of the rulers of the new order, enjoying limitless power and wealth. His words slid like a serpent's hiss, invasive and persuasive, as if they quietly declared that Sebastian's destiny lay here, by his side. Bring that boy to the mirror and have him retrieve the stone, Voldemort concluded, the tempo of his voice slowing to a command. A slow, deliberate clap cut through the room. Sebastian clapped, his hands falling away as he smiled. So many years, and your silver tongue hasn't rusted. I almost fell for it. He let the applause die down and spoke evenly. Wealth, power, immortality, each is tempting. But you haven't spoken those words to me for the first time, have you? And judging by Professor Quirrell's condition, your promises are thin. I saw how his life force has been sapped. Quirrell, who stood frozen in the room, went numb at the words. A tide of grief and vindication swelled in him. Finally, someone saw what he had been through. In Albania, he had been blinded by his own greed, believing that Voldemort would teach him the secret of true immortality. Voldemort's continued existence, even as a withered, ghost-like presence, had seemed proof enough that his method worked. The reality had been a different, crueler thing. Since being possessed, Quirrell had not learned immortality. He had been bled dry. Voldemort's presence continually drained him, day by day. Terrified and regretful, he had found no way to expel the Dark Lord. He dared not openly betray him. So he had played the fool on purpose, pretending to be terrified by the troll, bungling a jinx on Potter's broom, taking a Weasley snowball to the back of the head. A Ravenclaw graduate like him would never really be knocked out by a troll. If he had wanted to harm Potter when the jinx struck, he could have thrown him from his broom in an instant. The stunts had been acts of quiet defiance, attempts to make Voldemort despise him enough to leave. Instead, the more foolish he acted, the more Voldemort tightened his hold, deepening the drain and cutting off Quirrell's hope of escape. He had nearly given in to utter despair. He had considered drinking unicorn blood to stay alive, an act he loathed simply to keep breathing. Then Sebastian had appeared, offering him water steeped with the Philosopher's Stone. Expensive, yes, but Quirrell had taken it with a grateful, trembling hand. It had truly saved him. Those memories, the stark horror of being possessed, the small, bright relief of that water, rose up and made him cling to Sebastian as something like salvation. For the first time, Quirrell felt a flicker of gratitude. Sebastian's voice pulled him back from his reverie. "My Lord Dark Lord, I am not interested in the future you described. I find your violent rule repulsive." Voldemort's reply was thin and flat. "Is that so?" Sebastian smiled, but it was cold. "Let me give you an example so you can understand. Among Muggles, there's a game, addictive, thrilling. At first, it's fun to play, but if you use a cheat to win instantly, the victory is hollow. After 2 days, the game bores you. The future you offer is a cheat. You get everything at once. You can see the end from the start. It's meaningless. For the safety of the wizarding world, you should remain in this room forever." "Quirrell," Voldemort roared. "What are you waiting for? Kill him." "Don't struggle, my lord." Sebastian's voice drifted, calm as an actor on a stage. "You are too weak to sense my magic." Quirrell didn't understand the last words. He tried to step toward Sebastian to speak, but his legs wouldn't move. He looked down in panic. Thick ice had encased his calves and feet. How? He could not remember feeling cold. The ice spread, climbing up his body until only his head remained free above a neck of frozen crystal. A white, biting cold numbed his limbs. His right hand felt dead. His wand was useless in that numbness. Is this how one dies from being frozen? He could barely think. Footsteps echoed, soft, deliberate taps on the stone floor. Sebastian stepped out from behind Quirrell, facing him. Quirrell's breath fogged in the air. "Professor Quirrell," Sebastian asked simply, his voice close and steady, "do you want to live?" Chapter 118, Professor Flitwick, "Give me courage, live?" Of course he wanted to. A glimmer of hope, mixed with a long-buried longing, rose in Quirrell's eyes. Hadn't he struggled for so long because he wanted to live? But after so long under Lord Voldemort's control, was survival still possible? He looked at Sebastian, pleading, and stammered, "I want to live. Save me." Inside Quirrell, a fierce tug-of-war raged, his yearning to live on one side and the cold, venomous presence of Voldemort on the other. Voldemort's voice slid through his mind like a snake, hissing low, poisonous words that tried to charm and intimidate him into despair. "Are you trying to make me laugh, Quirrell?" The voice mocked, sharp and cruel. "Can't you see they already see through your disguise? They haven't come to save you. Everything here is a trap. Even if Dumbledore hasn't appeared, that hypocrite is watching coldly from afar. They never meant to save you." Sebastian ignored the taunts and held Quirrell's gaze. "I'm here to save you, but I need your full cooperation." Quirrell's agitation flared. He stared at Sebastian with burning intensity. "What should I do?" "You must have an unshakable belief that you can win," Sebastian said calmly. "You have to believe you can defeat Lord Voldemort. Only if you believe in yourself can others truly help." The faint light remaining in Quirrell's eyes dimmed. If it were that simple, would he have fallen this far? He had wanted to escape for so long, But this was Lord Voldemort. What could he possibly use to fight him? It's easy to say, he thought, but how do I do it? Sebastian saw how broken Quirrell was, scared out of his mind, not even a scrap of courage left, and sighed inwardly. To drive Voldemort out, the battle had to begin in Quirrell's consciousness. Quirrell himself had to take the lead. He inhaled and continued, patient and steady. I can understand why you fear him at his height, Sebastian said, but he isn't that invincible Dark Lord anymore. He's weakened, clinging to others just to survive. There's nothing to fear in his current state. You fear not him now, but the shadow of your memories. Face your own heart and break that fear. You must have the courage to resist. Believe that you can defeat him. Slowly, confusion and doubt in Quirrell's eyes receded, replaced by a flicker of resolve. Sebastian's words had touched him. He pressed on. Are you content to be his puppet? To die in the lies Voldemort spun for you? To end like this, half human, half ghost, rotting away in a damp, cold room? Are you content to never see again the things you once loved? Think of who you were, how much you loved life. Don't you want to see the rising sun again, feel a gentle breeze, let cool rain wet your face? Quirrell's mouth twitched. Ripples moved through his heart. He didn't want this. He hadn't come this far to be swallowed by Voldemort's shadow. He still had dreams, unread books, unexplored worlds. He remembered the passionate, curious man he'd once been. He refused to die in that abyss. Suddenly, Sebastian produced a sheet of paper and set it before Quirrell. The handwriting was familiar. Warmth and care seemed to seep from every line. For a moment, Quirrell went blank, transported by the memory it awakened. You already knew how to defeat Lord Voldemort, didn't you? Quirrell whispered, the realization slowly dawning. The paper, its contents tied to the magic of love, pricked a fresh ember of hope in him. That was the magic that had once undone Voldemort. If he could use it, he could drive the parasite out of his body. But he didn't know how to use it. The tiny flame of hope flickered again toward extinction. Who could show him what to do? Sebastian turned, raised his wand, and pointed toward the doorway. The familiar figure stepping in made Quirrell whisper, Professor Flitwick. Shame made him bow his head. He couldn't meet Professor Flitwick's eyes, like a child ashamed of some misdeed. Quirinus, Professor Flitwick said as he stood before him, concern and firm encouragement in his voice. You have always been one of my most valued students, the pride of Ravenclaw. Quirrell froze, then slowly lifted his head. Professor Flitwick, he had expected scolding. Instead, he found genuine care. Quirinus, though Ravenclaws prize wisdom most, we never lack the courage to fight our fate. Summon your courage and say no to Lord Voldemort. Flitwick's words carried a quiet power that kindled Quirrell's courage. He felt steadier, no longer utterly alone. With Flitwick beside him, even failure would be less bitter. And death was no stranger. Trying offered at least the chance of living. How could he surrender without trying? As the professor had said, a Ravenclaw didn't lack the courage to resist fate. Sebastian saw the change in Quirrell and said, Now, Quirrell, fully recall everything you love. Prepare to embrace the magic of love. Chapter 11 Have a safe journey. Gradually, Quirrell's aura grew stronger. Through Sebastian's magical perception, red points of light began to shimmer and multiply around him. Very good, Sebastian thought, nodding. If Quirrell had the courage to resist and the power of love in him, the spell Sebastian had researched might work. He had built it from the basic runes for love left behind by Ravenclaw, a charm that evoked and amplified the love in a person's heart, turning that love into a shield against the corrosion of evil. It was perfect for facing the half-life of Lord Voldemort. As the substance of love around Quirrell thickened and formed a standoff against the malice leaking from Voldemort, Sebastian knew the moment had come. He pointed his wand at Quirrell. Shield of Mind. Quirrell's head filled with bright, tender memories. He remembered the first moment he received his Hogwarts letter, the first wand he bought at Ollivander's, the first time he saw the Hogwarts Express at Platform 9 3/4. He saw his room full of flower specimens, Professor Flitwick recommending that he remain at Hogwarts to teach after becoming an exceptional graduate, his parents waiting for him back home. Those scenes, suffused with love, awoke in him a desperate desire to live. He wanted to go to Northern Europe to see the Aurora again. He wanted to chase rainbows after the rain, to lie under the starry sky, to watch the sunrise tomorrow, to eat Hogwarts breakfast just once more, to go into the Forbidden Forest again and gather a specimen for Professor Flitwick. "Quirinus, you can do it," Professor Flitwick cried, clenching his fists and cheering in his sharp, excited voice. Harry, seeing Quirrell's face harden with resolve, finally understood that Quirrell had been forced by Voldemort into stealing the Philosopher's Stone. He set aside their past grievances and shouted, "Professor Quirrell, you can do it. Don't let Lord Voldemort succeed." Buoyed by the cheers around him, Quirrell's will to live became the courage to resist. Using his own mind as a battlefield, he fought back, trying, bravely, and for the first time, to stop Voldemort from draining his life. With each act of resistance, he felt Voldemort's pull weaken. The power he had taken for granted was losing its grip. A new, unprecedented strength surged in him, his own strength, his determination not to yield. The more he resisted, the less life Voldemort could draw, until at last he could no longer take so much as a drop. Quirrell realized, with a shock of clarity, that Voldemort was weak now, and that Voldemort had always been afraid of that weakness. He could be master of his own life. In Sebastian's perception, the shield of love Quirrell had formed completely opposed the evil leaking from Voldemort. Very good, Sebastian thought again. His research had worked. Now the satisfying part could begin. Lord Voldemort, who fed on malice, would be cleansed by Quirrell's love. Sebastian waved his wand gently. The ice that had encased Quirrell shattered and melted away. Quirrell felt a weight lift, as if the darkness crushing him were being removed. Anger flared up inside him, sharp, hot, righteous. He staggered to his feet, fists clenched, fury burning in his eyes. "Who?" He drew a long breath, and then roared as he never had before. "Lord Voldemort, get out of my head!" Instinctively, he threw the mental shield outward and struck at Voldemort. Professor Flitwick practically leapt with joy. "Who said Ravenclaws had no courage? Look at Quirrell now. He's no less than anyone." Harry stared, palms sweaty with nervousness, silently praying that Quirrell would drive Voldemort out. Sebastian, watching the shield of love grow larger and stronger, finally felt relief. Quirrell's rage was driving the shield, and it slapped Voldemort again and again, dispersing much of the malice he emitted. Sensing Voldemort's aura weaken, Sebastian relaxed. This was success. Even if Voldemort could not be destroyed now, the overwhelming love was something he could not endure. "No, Quirrell, how dare you!" Voldemort shrieked, as though thrown into a blazing fire. Since becoming less than a ghost, he had never felt anything like this. For the first time, he wanted to get out. He struggled out of the back of Quirrell's head, and to everyone's surprise, condensed into something like steam and shadow. "Lord Voldemort." Harry seized the moment and pointed his wand. "Petrificus totalis." But Harry's spell passed through Voldemort's steaming form, as if through smoke, no effect. Voldemort floated there for a moment, giving everyone a long, hateful look, then became a gust of wind and fled toward the exit. When Voldemort escaped, Quirrell's courage drained away, and he went limp. After a stunned moment of gratitude toward Sebastian, he dropped to his knees beside Professor Flitwick and clung to him, sobbing. "Thank you for coming to save me. I'm alive." The tears poured from him like a broken dam, every grief and humiliation of the past year spilling out. "It's all right. It's all right now," Professor Flitwick murmured, patting his back gently and letting him cry. "You did wonderfully, Quirinus. I am so proud of you." Sebastian and Harry stood to the side and waited until Quirrell's crying had faded. Then Sebastian stepped forward, smiling. He patted Quirrell's shoulder. "Professor Quirrell, let's face reality. You are now squarely on Lord Voldemort's blacklist. If he returns to power, he will try to kill you without hesitation." Quirrell's face went rigid. The truth was cruel. It chilled him as if Sebastian's spell had taken hold again. He looked up at Sebastian with raw fear, as if silently asking how such cold words could be spoken so calmly. Sebastian's smile softened. "I can guarantee the safety of your entire family," he said. "There was a price. The condition is that you work for me for the next 30 years. Would you like to consider it, Professor Quirrell?" Chapter 120. I would like to worship you as my godfather, an extra chapter for yesterday's leave. Protect your entire family's safety? If you can do that, forget 30 years. I'll be your subordinate for life. Quirrell's fear of Lord Voldemort had once again taken over his reason. So when Sebastian made his offer, Quirrell jumped up, overjoyed, and blurted, "Thank you, boss." Sebastian grinned inwardly. He had gone to great lengths to save Quirrell, not only to make him a symbol in the fight against Voldemort, but also to recruit a useful agent. Sebastian's Muggle world businesses were many, and though Regulus handled most of them, he was stretched thin, especially outside Europe, where Regulus's attention was consumed by wizard pictures and wizard publishing. Quirrell was the perfect fit. He liked Muggles, understood the Muggle world, and having successfully infiltrated Gringotts, was no slouch. Sending him to oversee Asia as his agent would solve a major problem. To be safe, Sebastian planned to have Severus witness an unbreakable vow later. Smiling, he guided Quirrell to a corner and casually cast a soundproofing charm. "Before you say yes, hear my conditions. If you agree, I'll ask you to make an unbreakable vow." At the mention of the vow, Quirrell cooled off noticeably. He just escaped a dangerous situation and wasn't willing to risk his life on impulse. He stared at Sebastian and asked cautiously, "How exactly will you protect my family?" "I'll do it in several ways," Sebastian said steadily. "First, I can use an ancient spell to conceal your entire family's true names, so that from a magical perspective, you simply do not exist. Even an owl won't be able to find you. To be extra safe, you and your parents should adopt false names. From now on, you'll no longer be Quirrell, you'll be Loki. When Voldemort is finally defeated, I'll lift the concealment and restore your true names." Quirrell's heart skittered. That sounded reliable. If your true names are hidden, anyone searching by name will come up empty. Besides, hair and name were the easiest ways to trace someone magically, and he'd been bald for years, so name concealment would be especially effective. "Second," Sebastian continued, "I'll give you an alchemical device that resists prophecy detection. That way the Death Eaters won't be able to locate you through divination." Quirrell nodded, beginning to believe this plan. "Third, we need to address Voldemort's group directly, find their weak point." Quirrell blinked. "Their weakness?" Sebastian laughed and patted his shoulder. "Don't forget your former occupation." "My Muggle studies professor?" Quirrell hedged, baffled. Sebastian stopped teasing him. The greatest weakness of Voldemort's followers is that they utterly despise Muggles. "After I secure your safety magically, I'll arrange a Muggle identity for you. You and your parents can live as Muggles for a few years. No Death Eater will think to use purely Muggle methods to find you." Quirrell's eyes lit up. Before he could reply, Sebastian went on, "Of course, you shouldn't stay in Britain. To be safe, you'll leave on a smuggling ship and transfer to my operations in Asia, Thailand, Vietnam, Laos, Myanmar, Cambodia. You'll manage my businesses there under a Muggle identity. Don't worry, your salary will be generous enough for you and your parents to live comfortably." Quirrell had no more doubts. Under Sebastian's plan, his family would be safe and well provided for. He seized Sebastian's hand and said with feeling, "From today on, you're my boss for life." "If you don't mind, may I call you my godson?" Sebastian teased. "Godfather?" Quirrell said, hopeful. Sebastian waved a hand. "No, I don't want a grown man calling me that. Next, I'll arrange for you to meet a Muggle, Mr. White, who'll teach you the practical side of running a company. Spend a year learning from him, and then, within a year, take your parents to Asia on that smuggling ship." He reached into his pocket, produced a small magic camera, and placed it in Quirrell's hand. "Record a few videos with this. I've already thought of a title." Quirrell looked at him. "I'm reporting with my real name. You know who doesn't treat his subordinates like people at all," Sebastian said. "Tell your story, how you know who tricked you and then persecuted you." Quirrell blinked, then laughed weakly at the vindictive satisfaction of it. After he'd settled Quirrell, Sebastian left him and hurried to catch up with Professor Flitwick. He gathered Harry and the others and left the room. In the fourth-floor corridor, they met Severus Snape, who stood with a dark expression. The 4 students at his side looked chastened. "You 4 trespassed into the restricted area on the 4th floor," Snape said flatly. 20 points from each of you." Even with a neutral tone, Snape's anger was plain. Harry lowered his head and didn't argue. Then, to everyone's surprise, Snape's voice softened. "However, since the 4 of you put aside your differences and cooperated, I'm awarding 30 points to each of you." With that, he swept his black robes and strode off. Sebastian almost gave an approving thumbs up. He wondered whether Dumbledore would rearrange the points later. He'd watch with interest. Putting his left arm around Harry and his right arm around Malfoy, he steered the group toward the kitchens. "Harry said you haven't had dinner yet. Come on, Professor. I'll cook to reward your brave performance." "Malfoy, don't tell your father about today," he added. "Why?" Malfoy asked, still buzzing from the thrill of catching villains. He'd wanted to write home immediately. "If you tell your father today, I'm afraid your allowance might be cut tomorrow," Sebastian said with mock severity. Malfoy swallowed and, for once, decided to take the advice. "Mr. Weasley," Sebastian went on, "you played wizard's chess well and bravely sacrificed yourself. The professor gives you his thumbs up." Ron puffed up proudly. "Miss Granger, recognizing the devil's snare and diffusing the danger saved Mr. Weasley. You really are the brightest witch in the year." Hermione blushed and scratched her head. "Harry, I'm glad you didn't rush in recklessly and used your equipment advantage when it mattered." Harry laughed sheepishly and exchanged looks with his friends. "You must be starving. Eat a lot." "Oh, and what would you like to drink? I've got cola, pumpkin juice, and non-alcoholic butterbeer." They all called out at once. "2 colas, 2 butterbeers,